There is a very big change coming to short form video content, specifically Instagram Reels and TikTok videos. And no, it's not the looming TikTok ban. It's a total shift in the way we create and consume content. And it's being pioneered by one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the last 5 years, and someone who very much pioneered the way we currently consume educational entrepreneurial content on short form video. Today, we're going to be talking about what has been working in the world of short form video and what's going to be working in the near future. I also want to make a quick disclaimer that if you're watching on YouTube and you notice that my shelves are completely empty and my couch is missing, it's because we're moving out, we're renovating, and so, just deal with it. Focus on the content and not the vanity. Now, let's get into specifics. What I was talking about, that famous entrepreneur who pioneered the kind of content that we're very much used to seeing today, is Alex Hormozi. You may or may not know him, but essentially over the last 5 years, he's gained massive popularity for an aggressive level of consistency, but a very specific style of video. This style of video is very highly edited. It has these really big, bold, attention-grabbing closed captioning on it. It's not just closed captioning for the sake of transcribing the video. It's closed captioning for the sake of holding on to the audience's attention. In fact, many people refer to today's style of short-form video as Hormozi style editing. It's very fast-paced. There's lots of zooms and cuts and B-roll and background video and green screen and effects and all of these different things to keep the viewer stimulated, even if the content itself isn't that engaging. Another example of Hormozi style videos are the videos where people look like they're on podcasts. And I hate to break it to you, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but many of these podcasts that you see people posting on social media are not actually podcasts. They're just fake podcasts where someone has a microphone that isn't even plugged in, and it's just meant to look like a podcast because for whatever reason on social media for the last few years, that's been something that really provides some credibility or some social clout, and these clips that look like they're taken out of a podcast oftentimes would get better engagement. That was until recently. Over recent months, these highly edited videos, these podcast-esque clips have been performing worse. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about why that is and what's coming next. And this is something that I've seen happening over the last few months. I've been noticing it within my own content. And I actually recently did a study of the reels that I've been posting on Instagram. And specifically, I wanted to compare the reels where I was sitting here at my desk. I had like my nice office setup, my professional microphone, my professional editing done by my editor, and compare those to the reels that were a lot less professional in every way. So they were either filmed without a microphone or with a cheap $10 microphone off of Amazon. They weren't filmed in my professional office with my fancy lighting and all this stuff and my fancy camera. They were just filmed on my phone. Usually the only source of light was like the sun or maybe a lamp. And the only editing was trimming out dead space and trimming out mistakes. There weren't like zooms and cuts and transitions and sound effects and all these other fancy things. And I definitely had my own hypothesis going into this study as to which kind of content would perform best. Maybe even as I'm talking right now, you have your own thought in your brain of which of these two kinds of posts is going to perform better. But when I actually crunched the numbers and looked at the data, I was shocked to see the outcome. My reels that were more raw, imperfect, in the moment, that did not have a fancy camera, a fancy microphone, fancy lighting, or fancy editing, performed far better. In fact, on average, I got 81% more views when I was doing this raw, imperfect style of content. I also got 81% more reach. That one makes sense. Views and reach are pretty much interchangeable when it comes to your reels. But I also got 85% more likes. That was crazy to me. 85% more likes when I was filming this raw, imperfect, on my phone style of content. And I got 35% more shares, which if you've listened to some of our recent episodes of Build Your Tribe, you will know that shares are absolutely essential. In our opinion, shares are the best form of engagement on Instagram. Instagram CEO has actually said this himself, that he believes shares are the best way to reach new people. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Likes are very easy to come by. Comments usually require some amount of investment by your audience. Saves don't really do much for your post because people are saving things to watch them later, but then they rarely ever do. But a share is literally someone spreading your post to their friend. It's someone sending your post in their group chat or to their BFF or their spouse or even sharing it to their story. And so that's why on average, one share on Instagram equates to 400 additional views. And so it was really impressive to see that this raw, imperfect perfect content, the content that arguably was quote unquote less presentable, actually got 35% more shares. The amount of saves that I was getting, depending on the kind of content I was posting, was almost no difference. There was a very, very small percent difference between the professional videos like you're watching right now and the more raw and perfect videos. The only real statistic that did better, or that was higher, I guess you could say, when it was a very professional, well done video, was comments. And I think I can explain this one. I think that this one was because usually my content that asks for a ManyChat keyword, which is basically asking people to comment, that is usually the style of post that is highly edited because I'm thinking about it ahead of time. I'm planning it. Oftentimes it's like a sponsored post or a partnership or a promotion or a sale. And so I'm planning it ahead of time. I'm recording it. I'm scripting it. I'm having my editor professionally edit it. And so it makes sense that that style of content is getting the most comments, but I don't think it's necessarily because of that style of content. I think it's just because of how I've treated that style of content, if that makes sense. But really, to summarize all of these statistics, what I found is that videos that are recorded on my phone with a cheap microphone, with no lighting, with very little editing, with very little scripting, usually perform far better than the more expensive, harder to produce, higher quality content that I can make with a fancy camera, fancy lights, and a fancy microphone. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but what am I gonna do? I'm gonna take all of the scripts, all of the things that I've already recorded with my fancy setup, and I'm just going to record them a second time with my non-fancy setup, with my phone and my cheap microphone. I've already written out the script. I already have the hook. I already have the call to action. In many cases, I've already posted it, so I already have an idea of how this content will perform, or maybe even what parts of the content are lacking, what could be improved. I'm just now going to use that as a template and re-record it on my phone. So I can make essentially double the amount of posts with very little additional effort. Like, I don't have to be more creative. I just have to take a couple seconds to record it on my phone. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Not to jump too far ahead of ourselves, but again, I brought up Alex Hormozi and how he was one of the pioneers of this fancy style of production, right? With the nice camera, lighting, microphone, etc. I've said it 50 times by now. But he made an announcement on Instagram, and I thought even the announcement itself was very funny because it was a screenshot of something that he had very clearly written in his notes app. And even the screenshot was like janky. There was like, a little graphic in the corner that was not supposed to be there. It was just like part of what happened when he took the screenshot. There was like the little scroll thing on the right-hand side, which was also not supposed to be there. But nonetheless, I thought it was interesting that in this announcement, it was kind of meta that the announcement itself was very like rough and informal and non-professional. It wasn't like this beautifully, typed out graphic design. It was kind of like a thought almost, if you will. And I think that's a good way to think about, pun intended, this style of content that is more rough around the edges and more in the moment it's sharing thoughts. Even if these thoughts aren't fully formed or they're not fully connected or they're not, punchy and to the point, they're more organic. And so here is his announcement. I'll read it to you word for word, and you can find it on his Instagram. We'll also put it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Announcement. I made 35,000 pieces of content over the last 3 years, and I'm making changes. First and foremost, I want to stop right there by saying that he has made, I should say probably his team has helped him make 35,000 pieces of content. That is wild. Even for someone like myself who posts multiple times a day on every single platform, the idea of making 35,000 pieces of content in 3 years is wild. In fact, if you do the math on that, 35,000 pieces of content in 3 years is about 32 pieces of content per day. Now, he used the term make, and I would assume he's not actually making 32 videos per day. Part of that is like posting 32 videos. Maybe if he has, 5 videos that he's posting per day, but he's posting them across 6 different platforms, that's 30 videos per day right there. Still super high volume. I'm not trying to discredit him. I'm actually trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to prove to you that if you want to get good at content creation, if you want to blow up, if you want more followers, more customers, more sales, it is ultimately a numbers game. That is the stage of social media we're at. From 2005 to 2015, we were in a social media sphere where you could reliably get a good amount of engagement by posting a few times a week, and you would grow that way, and it was all about social relationships and who are you friends with and who are they friends with, and we're going to recommend you. But in today's world of social media, media, where we're competing with ads and with marketers and social media managers and major corporate accounts, the more you post, the more you grow. This has been confirmed by Instagram CEO. This is something I've been saying for years. And also, not only the more you post, the more you grow, the more you post, the better your content is going to get. It's essentially practice. So not to go off on too much of a tangent here, not to stop his announcement too early, even though I know we're literally 2 sentences into this announcement, but 32 posts per day over 3 years, extremely impressive. And that is the reason why so many of us know him. But let's get back into the announcement. He said, number 1, no more wide/general content. I'm only making business stuff for business. This is huge. And I love that he said this, because really what this is niche, right? This is what we have been saying for years. Step 1 to growing on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on any platform is niching down. In fact, recently, my mom niched down her own Instagram account and saw growth for the first time in months, maybe even years. Of course, you might know her. You might look at her Instagram and be like, oh, she's got 700 something thousand followers. That's so impressive. She's crushing it. But behind the scenes, she was aware that for many months, she wasn't growing. And that's because if you followed my mom on Instagram, you know that her ADHD has taken her in a million different directions, and she didn't have a clear niche. Sometimes she would post about the InstaClubHub or growing on Instagram or marketing. Sometimes she would post about entrepreneurship and business. Sometimes she would talk about fitness and menopause. A lot of times she would talk about ADHD. There was a long period of time where she was talking about being a caretaker for my grandpa and dealing with his Alzheimer's. So she had all these different niches, all these different directions she was going down. And while her audience was liking it and her engagement was not bad, she wasn't growing. But she wanted to grow. She wanted to grow with a very specific kind of person, someone who would be interested in her platform, her program, Phase It Up. And so she challenged herself, and partially I challenged her, to niche down. And so for a few weeks, she got super hyper specific about menopause, premenopause, postmenopause, and really ways that you can do fitness and weight loss and walking challenges and all of these different fitness hyper specific things on her Instagram. And she started to grow again. And now she's over 800,000 followers. She hit 800K right as I hit 700K. Shout out to her. That is flipping awesome. And going back to what Hormos said, no more wide/general content. I'm only making business stuff for business. And this is how he blew up in the first place, is with business stuff for business. But now that he's blown up, he started to post about his fitness and what he wears in the day and his meal hacks and all these different things. But he's going deep in just one area. He's doing business stuff for business. So he's doing a niche. He's focusing on one singular topic, most likely so that he can continue to grow his following, continue to expand his reach. And also he probably recognizes that people who are looking for business stuff are likely going to be better customers who are going to stick around for longer and be willing to pay more than a bunch of gym bros who are following him for the latest hack on how to make a 300 gram of protein smoothie that you could drink after you work out. Now, that was just the first bullet point of his announcement, but I thought it was very important that we touch on it. That wasn't really the focus of today's episode, though. The focus of today's episode was really his second and third part of the announcement. The second part of the announcement reads, no more ADD, quote, high production. It will be light edits and mostly uncut. This is a complete 180 flip from what he was previously posting. And this was actually something that we saw happen about 6 months ago with Mr. Beast on YouTube. You may or may not be familiar with Mr. Beast, but he is the biggest YouTuber in the world. Many of his videos, in fact, the majority of his videos, well over 100 million views. He's got hundreds of millions of subscribers. He's crushing it. And he very much pioneered a very fast-paced editing style. And now what he's doing is he's still treating the first, I think he said 10 to 30 seconds of his YouTube videos as a fast-paced, almost like a trailer, a preview, something to hook his audience in. But after that, he's very much taking the same approach that Alex Hormos reports here, which is not the high production, the ADHD content. I love that way of describing it. And mostly light edits and mostly uncut, which means that he's not spending a lot of time or money or effort chopping up his videos and adding all these transitions and effects. He's really relying on the content, the storytelling, and the actual purpose of the video to hook in his audience and deliver his message. I think think this is really interesting, and this also echoes what I have found and discovered with my own stats, with my own reels over the last 6 months. The more lighter edits, the uncut videos are performing better. And later, we're going to talk about why I think this is, but I think you might already have some ideas in your head, so go ahead and keep thinking about those as we continue. His third announcement that he made as part of this post was more long form. That was it. 3 words. More long form, period. And this is what the platforms are heading towards. All of these platforms recognize that if they can keep their people watching minute-long videos, people are going to spend more time on the platform than if they're only watching 7-second videos. Additionally, if people are watching minute-long videos on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, creators have to create less content. Let's make the numbers super simple, and I'll just use like my own account as an example. Let's say I were to post a 6-second reel, and I had 100 people view that reel for the full 6 seconds. Well, that would be 600 seconds of viewing. Now let's take a 60-second video. I would only have to have 10 people watch that full video to have the same retention rate, the same amount of total time watched. That also means that I now have to create less content, because if I can have 100 people watching a 60-second video, that is quite literally 10 times more watch time than if I were to have 100 people watch a 6-second video. The platform wins because people are spending more time on the platform. The creators win because now we have to create less content, and the consumer doesn't need as much to consume. Essentially, what a lot of these platforms were running into on a very high level, and this is going to sound crazy, they were running out of content that was at the same A+ level of engagement. All of these platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, they're all trying to serve us the most engaging content possible. The A+ content, the content that we would be super interested in so that we stay on the platform. And if we're super interested in a 6-second video, we're going to spend less time, and they're going to need more videos than if we're super interested in an A+ 60-second video. So that's why all these platforms are heading towards long-form content, and that means that they're going to reward the creators, not who post long-form content, but who post engaging long-form content. And that's the real key, because I always get people asking, how long should my reels be? How long should my YouTube videos be? How long should my TikToks be? And I like to tell them a great rule that I learned from this. Actually, this name was come up with by one of our InstaClubHub students. And what they said is it's the miniskirt rule. Your content should be long enough to cover what needs to be covered, but short enough to hold attention. And I think that's a great way to think about it. So if you make a 90-second reel, but people aren't going to pay attention for 90 seconds, then you're wasting your time. You'd be better off creating a shorter one. Now, there is no sweet spot. I can't tell you make a 37-second reel, make a 62-second TikTok video. Every audience is going to be different, and even more helpful to know, every content creator is going to be different. Some people are really great at making 3, 4, 5-minute long videos. The other day on TikTok, I watched a 10-minute long video and didn't even realize it. 10 minutes on TikTok, where people famously watch like 3-second videos, and I watched a 10-minute video, but the creator was that engaging that I was able to stick around for the entire 10 minutes. So know yourself, know your audience, and play around with it to find a length that is right for you. But if you can extend that length and keep your audience's attention, go for it. So that was his third and final announcement. And then he concluded his announcement by saying, so if you're a business owner, hint, hint, he's calling out his niche by name. My last 5 YouTube videos is the new OG style. I think he meant to say are the new OG style, but as someone who is famous for spelling and grammatical errors, I'm not going to judge him for that. But what he's saying is he's kind of using this post as an announcement and to promote his new YouTube videos where he's going in this style. But then he goes on to say, just value, which is, I think, really key here. He's focusing on the value rather than the vanity. I hope you prefer it as much as I prefer making it, which is key. He enjoys making content. When you enjoy making a certain kind of content, it's going to be evident to your audience. It's going to shine through in the video that you're making. If you're making a video because a brand gave you a script and they're paying you $100 to do it, but it doesn't align with you, you're not into it, it doesn't resonate with who you are and what you enjoy making, your audience is going to be able to tell. And I know it was a specific example, but any kind of content that you make for any kind of platform, if you're forcing it, it's not going to be very good. One of my favorite content creators, Monty Lands, says content is kind of like a fart. The more you have to force it, the more likely it's going to be crap. So I love that Hormozi ends his announcement by saying, I hope you prefer it as much as I prefer making it. Back to business. Back to business, just to sign off. We don't need to break that down. And this is a challenge for you. Find a style of content that you enjoy making, or even just that you prefer making more than others, and it will bring you joy to create that kind of content, and your audience will like the content more, they'll engage with it more, because scientifically, I don't understand what goes on behind the scenes in our brains, but subconsciously, they'll be able to tell. Now, why do I think this is happening? Number one, I think it's just the natural pendulum swing. Like that's just kind of how things go. They swing back and forth. We like short form, then we like long form. We like horizontal, then we like vertical. We like super highly edited professional, then we like super raw uncut. I would guess in like 2 to 3 years, once everyone is posting these like raw, imperfect, in the moment, kind of off the cuff videos, suddenly there's going to be one person who's going to blow up for super great editing because that will stand out, right? That's different than the norm. The pendulum is always going to swing. And once it swings too far in one direction and everyone is doing one type of thing, the other thing will come back. I think of like Reels in 2023, where 2022, 2021, everyone was posting Reels. They were everywhere. They were dominant. They were crushing. Everyone's posting like 90% of their content being Reels on Instagram. And then suddenly the pendulum swings back. Instagram balances out the algorithm. People start posting more photos and more carousels. And now carousels and photos are doing really well and Reels are performing worse. So it's just the pendulum swinging back and forth. That's always how it goes. The second reason why I think that this is happening, and we talked about this one a little bit earlier, it's platform preferences, right? I don't need to go deep into it again, but if the platform can keep you on the platform for longer, they can make more money, they can sell more ads, they can keep you around without having to keep as much content in front of your face. It's just easier. Rather than having to make 3 1-hour-long movies, they can make 1 3-hour-long movie. It's less expensive. They need less actors, less editing. It's a win-win. And then the third and final reason why I think this is happening is audience fatigue. And this is something that I know I've run into myself. And this was actually the initial reason why I wanted to do this study into my Reels. Because I always tell people, change things up, change up your background, change up your lighting, your clothes you're wearing, the coloring of your fonts and whatever. Just change things up because, and this is a quote that I think I made up. My mom always loves to make fun of me for these quotes that I claim as my own. I think I made this one up. Variety is the spice of life. That one's not mine. Everyone's heard that one before. Variety is the spice of life. The second part is the one I've made up. Variety is the spice of life and the price of likes. You get it? The price of likes. Variety is the price of likes. It rhymes, and I think it's true. I think that the more variety you can incorporate into your content, the more likes you're going to get. I think a great example of this was a few weeks ago, I posted a reel where I was like leaning into my car. It was super dark. Like you probably couldn't even tell I was in my car. You could just tell I was in a new space. I didn't have like my fancy lighting or mic or anything. I just had like my little handheld microphone and I was whispering the entire time. And so it was so different than what people are used to for me. They're used to big lights. They're used to a nice microphone. They're used to good editing. And this was literally just like 60 seconds of me whispering into my microphone. And that variety caught a lot of people's attention. And that was one of my best performing posts in the month of April. So again, variety is the spice of life and the price of likes. And so this goes to my point that I think the audience was getting fatigued. I think that when every single video you're watching is like this ADHD style, super hyper cut, tons of things going on. Maybe you've even heard of this one style of content called sludge content, which is the ultimate example of brain rot. Which brain rot, not to go off on another tangent, brain rot is this term that's being thrown around a lot on social media. That's basically like, hey, our brains are rotting. We are watching this super short form content. Our attention spans are shrinking and our brains are literally rotting. I don't think that's actually the case, but I do think that the idea behind it is true, which is that spending 9 hours a day on your phone consuming short form videos that are super highly editing isn't the best for your brain's health. But sludge content, going back to what I was talking about, is this style of content. You might have seen it on TikTok before, where there's 2 videos playing at the same time, which it's kind of crazy to think about. Like, Imagine showing this to someone even 50 years ago. Think about showing this to like a pilgrim, being like, hey, watch this. There's literally like a talking head video or an interview from a podcast on like the upper half of the screen. And then the lower half of the screen is like someone scooping sludge or someone like playing Roblox on their computer. And it's crazy. And the idea behind sludge content is like, let's give the person two things to consume at once, because their attention span is so short that at least if they get bored with the talking head video, they can like zone out and watch the lower video. And then if they tune back into the talking head, they can like look back up. It's crazy to actually break down what sludge content is. But with that being prevalent, with just this hyper editing, hyper cut up, closed caption, all these different edits, transitions, fancy microphone, fancy camera, fancy lights, all this crap, it's draining, it's tiring. And not only all of that, also, if you're seeing 100 of these videos in a row, they lose their luster. Like, it doesn't seem that cool or impressive. It's like if you watch 50 Marvel movies in a row, you're not going to be blown away by the CGI and the explosions and the editing by the 50th one. You're going to be like, yeah, that's what I expect. Now, if you go from watching black and white movies from the 1940s to all of a sudden Avengers Endgame, you're going to be blown away. You're like, holy crap, I didn't realize this was possible. But again, just going back to what I'm talking about here, the audience fatigue of lack of variety, the audience fatigue that is generated by seeing the same hyper, even if it's great editing, great quality, even if all of these things are true, if it's the same thing over and over and over again, people get bored. And so that's why I originally wanted to look into my reels, because I know that I record a lot of reels like with this microphone, with this lighting, with this lamp, with this photo, with this shelving unit behind me. And I figured that it was starting to get boring for people. And of course, I'm vaguely aware of what my engagement is like. And so I was like, I notice when I post those, I'm pretty sure my engagement is lower. So I did this study and I shared all the stats with you earlier, but it's crazy how much worse my videos perform when they have better quality content, better editing, better lighting, microphone, camera, etc. And so the big takeaway from this entire episode, what I hope you take away from it, is that you need to just start creating. Start creating raw, imperfect, and messy. Maybe for the last year or so, you've been like, I'm not sure if I can post reels. I'm not sure if I can consistently post on TikTok. I'm not sure if I'm meant to be a YouTuber because I don't have the nice camera, the nice microphone, the nice lighting. And I love that I get to be the person to tell you this right now. Forget all that crap because you do not need it. In fact, all of that crap is going to make your videos perform worse. All you need is the phone in your hand. If you want to buy a $10 microphone off Amazon, go for it. I think that might be the one piece of equipment that I would recommend just because audio quality is important. But fancy editing, fancy transitions, all of this crap, forget it. Forget the vanity. Focus on the value. Focus on the message that you're delivering. Focus on honing in on what that niche is. Who is the primary demographic that you're talking to? And what is that specific topic that you're going to be talking to them about? Figure out those things and then just start creating content. Start being sloppy, messy, even if your thought isn't fully formed, even if it's imperfect, even if you make a few mistakes in the video, keep rolling with it and keep posting. Because at the end of the day, this is a numbers game and your audience will appreciate that vulnerability, that authenticity, and that realness from you. I'm excited to make these changes myself in the next few months. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. If you're watching this on YouTube, what do you think about all these changes? Have you noticed them? Are you going to make these changes yourself? Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, happy networking.